Congrats on getting beyond a million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond a million.
When you are building a business, 80% is mindset, 20% is mechanics. And I can teach the mechanics all day long to my students, but if they don't believe they can do it, or if they don't have that mental toughness, all my strategies don't even matter.
Amy Porterfield, I appreciate you carving out some time to talk today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure. So you have been kind of circling around and actually in our CRM for many, many, many years. And we have not gotten a chance to really dive into things. But before we do, I want to get kind of the general background on who you are for those that don't know.
So I always say I'm an ex-corporate girl turned accidental entrepreneur. I never really aspired to be my own boss or be an entrepreneur until my very last corporate job. So my last corporate job was with Tony Robbins, and I was the director of content development. I was there for almost 7 years, and it was an amazing job. And I was really good at corporate, climbing that corporate ladder and getting the raises and the awards and all that good stuff. My ego was really tied to that. And I loved the work I did. I got to travel the world with Tony and the team, work on the content that he does at events like Unleash the Power Within, Date with Destiny. You know Tony, you know those events. But here's what happened. One day, Tony decided to bring in a bunch of online business owners into the San Diego headquarters. And they were all men, and they were all around this big oak table. And humbly enough, I was called into the meeting to take notes. And so I was sitting at a side table and typing away, taking my notes. And I probably took the worst notes of my life that day because Tony went around and said, tell me about your businesses. Because one of the things that I think Tony does well of many things is that he finds out who's killing the game and then he dissects it and learns from that. And we were wanting to get more into the online space. And so these guys were all selling courses, masterminds, memberships online. And so one by one, they went around and they talked about their businesses. And if you know the online space, you would know these guys. Frank Kern, Jeff Walker, Brendan Burchard, Evan Pagan, like they were really big names at the table. And so they talked about their businesses, but all I heard was freedom. They were working when they wanted, where they wanted, how they wanted. They were being as creative as possible. They were coming up with these amazing ideas. They were impacting lives and they were making lots of money. And my ears perked up and I thought, I have no idea how they're doing this, but I want a piece of it. And it was the first time in my whole life that I realized I'm not free and I never have been, and I would love to call the shots and do my own thing. So it was about a year from that fateful meeting that I drove out of those San Diego offices with all the boxes in my little white car, driving away to start my own business. Long story short, the first 2 years were horrible. I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur. I stumbled my way through. I got into debt, but finally I started to figure it out. And the way I figured it out was I started to create digital courses and sell them online and teach people online marketing. And that was my sweet spot. Fast forward 14 years later, I have a multi-million-dollar business. We've generated over $80 million in revenue. We've helped 50,000 students create their businesses and their courses. And really, really love what I'm doing. But really, truly, it felt very accidental in the beginning.
I have so many questions on that. And a bunch of those people sitting around that table are clients of ours. And I know very well at this point. Well, it was also cool for them at that time, right? Because they were sort of I look at them as the OG internet marketers, right? They were the original people that cracked the code to really get rich online, make money online. In a way that had independence, right? As you said.
Absolutely. We're all living that independent life, and I wanted a piece of that.
Yeah. And actually, for anybody that wants to go back in the archives, I think that turned into an info product for Tony. And I can't remember Do you remember what it was called?
The New Money Makers, and I was part of that program. Yep. And a lot of those guys, Russell Brunson was another one that was on that product. Marie Forleo was the only female on that product. It was a really cool product. And it's so funny you bring that up because most people don't know about the New Money Makers. But the cool thing about it is that they were like groundbreaking at the time. They were doing things that were like unheard of and very, very cool and strategic. But today, that's just like the norm. So it's come so far and it's changed so much. But back then, it was really innovative.
Yeah. And Mike Koenig's, I think, was another one who was a good buddy.
There. And it might be the New Money Masters. I think it was the New Money Masters.
I think you're right.
Called. Yeah. But yeah, Mike Koenig's was there. It was a really cool product.
Yeah. I think Masters seems more on brand for Tony than Makers.
It does, right? Yeah.
I love that. So the transition, I mean, that was the compressed version of your story, which is awesome. I want to dig into today and how things have changed in the last few years, because you mentioned that the first 2 years were rough. So I guess first let's talk about that, and then let's talk about kind of the transition to making it be powerful and not rough.
When I went out on my own, I always knew I wanted to create digital products. I just had that in me. I learned that when I was still with Tony, and that meeting really changed things for me because that's what all those guys were doing. But I didn't know how to do it on my own. So I went out and I became a consultant, and I did social media for small businesses, and I had a bunch of clients, and I hated every minute of it. I literally created a business that I hated. And when you think about leaving corporate and going out on your own, you think you're going to be on a beach, sipping Mai Tais with a laptop and just your dreams and making it happen. I didn't look anything like that. I worked more hours than I did for Tony, which is crazy because we worked a lot of hours, and I did not make a lot of money. And so I realized I wasn't good at the one-on-one. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't know how to set boundaries. I was a yes girl at the time. So I took all the responsibilities at the end of a call. They had zero. I had all of them, and I couldn't get it done. So I was miserable with the business I created. And a lot of times people will just go back to what they know, but I knew that I was meant for more and I needed to do something different. So that's when I decided I'm going to create my first digital course. Now, I put it together, I stumbled around it, and I got this digital course together. And I looked around on social media, and it felt like everybody was making lots of money online. And I had come from that Robbins world, so I had seen proof that it worked. So I thought, I'm making $100,000. There's no doubt this first product is going to make $100,000. $267 in profit later, I was devastated. And I thought, I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. This isn't working. I can't create those info products. And so I thought I would have to grovel back from my job. Luckily, I have a really great husband that kind of picked me up and pushed me back out. He's like, you're not going back. And so I continued to perfect my craft of creating these courses, and finally it hit. And so once I had a digital course that was doing well, I just doubled down on it. And so I started creating courses over and over again, selling them with webinars and email marketing and social media. And that's what really propelled me into getting past those first 2 really bad years. It was just kind of sticking with something until it finally stuck.
From a marketing perspective, what was the difference between what you're doing today to sell those courses and what you did initially in that first year?
Ooh, I love this question. So if I think about the first year that I created and launched a course, to fast forward to this year, the number one thing that is incredibly different, and this is something that everyone can get on board with, I'm just better at it. Because back in the day, I did webinars, and I've been doing webinars since day one of creating courses. Back in the day, I did email marketing, I did social media, but it's more of a mindset shift than anything else, and just getting really good at understanding webinar conversions and copy conversion and understanding my audience more. I also didn't have an email list. And so that was huge. You know, back then, I didn't realize that if I don't have a loyal email list, I essentially don't have an online business. Tony used to say, like, that is the most important asset in your business is your database, your subscriber list, your email list. And I didn't have one. So that's the number one thing that was different. And now I have this motto today that every day you have to be list building. You don't have to do it consciously. It can happen in the background of your business, but your email list is the most important important asset in your business if you're doing business online. I don't care if you're selling a physical product, an info product, you have an e-commerce, whatever it is, you've got to have a thriving email list. I didn't have that back then, so that's number one reason why I struggled. And I just didn't understand how to show up and sell online. And so I've just gotten much better at that. But it's funny, I've never thought of this question, and I appreciate you asking. It wasn't like I was doing anything dramatically different. I just stuck with it and got better at my craft.
So fundamentally, are you saying that the funnel was the same?
It really was, because if I look at it, I'm really trying to think. I used paid ads back then, Facebook only. I used an opt-in, a freebie. I used my webinar. And then I learned different strategies along the way. I did 1 or 2 webinars, where today when I launch a digital course, I'll do 5 to 8 live webinars. Back in the day, I didn't realize that when you're on a webinar, that Q&A is everything. Spend time on the Q&A, stay as long as people are there. I would jump off and probably leave $100,000 on the table back then when I was doing these because I didn't know. So it's nuances that I've learned and perfected, but the funnel absolutely looks very similar than it does today. Now, I will say that it's way more sophisticated. So let me give you an example. Back then, I would post on social media, and at the time, Facebook Live was really all there was. That was like the thing that worked the most, Facebook Lives and Facebook ads. I rarely do that versus how much I use Instagram now. So it's a different platform. Instagram for me converts a whole lot better than Facebook. But in addition, we use a ManyChat strategy where we tell people on Instagram, all right, in the comments, post the word video and I'll send you XYZ for free kind of thing. And we grow our list by using automation and ManyChat in the DMs of Instagram. That has become a big part of our list growth, where back in the day, it didn't even exist.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Did you do anything manually back in the day? Because, ManyChat, the advent of DM selling or comment selling is relatively new, right? We're talking the last few years here at best. Did you have somebody manually combing through inboxes to respond at that point, or did you have a different kind of automation? And does that still come into play? Do you still sell in other ways other than through DMs?
So back then, I didn't even take advantage of my DMs. I didn't even know to go in there or make it automated. So it wasn't even part of how I did it. However, I was really active in comments. Like back then, blogging was more popular. So I was active in blogging comments. I was more active in my customer support emails because my audience was smaller, so I could personally respond to everyone. So I did a lot of grassroots activity back then versus today, it's less grassroots. However, there's still a high touch point. So let me make a comparison. Back then, I might have gotten into an email in my help desk. It was just me and an assistant. So I would personally answer a question about the course they're thinking about buying. Today, I have a team of 3 or 4 at the time during a launch, customer support reps, but I still get into my help desk about an hour a day during a live launch, and I personally respond with a video or my voice, because they'll never believe it's me if I don't. They'll just believe it's someone acting as me and my team. So I do that for an hour a day, and we crush it because they know I care and I'm giving my time. So I'm still looking for high touch opportunities. And that's why the DM strategy that's automated now is more high touch, because we've personalized it as much as we can. So even back in the day, I was doing high touch. Today, I still do it, but in a bigger way, in a more strategic way.
I love that. Well, I think there are good lessons there, both for brand new people and for experienced people, because whether you're, 8, 9 figures into business and you're introducing a new channel and you're saying, hey, we're going to create some info product now, or something totally unrelated, or you're brand new, in the beginning, you still need to be high touch to figure out what's working, right?
Yeah.
You can't put automation before understanding.
I totally agree. And I think, when I was a smaller business and it was just me and my assistant, Rebecca, I spent so much time figuring out who this audience was. It kind of touches my heart a little when I think about the early years. I knew the names of the people on my email list. I knew if they had kids or what they were struggling with. I knew them more because it was a small handful versus hundreds of thousands of people on my list now. And so I was able to be in relationship with them, conversation with them, and really understand who they were. And I think my strength today, if you fast forward 14 years, you ask me who my audience is, and I could rattle off what they're thinking, where they're struggling, what they need. But it was a lot of the work that I did in the early years. So that's when I think it's so important when you can have those touch points because you do have a smaller audience.
Yeah. There's kind of I think a famous entrepreneurial story about the origins of Airbnb. And before they started, they were told, as they were kind of flailing about a little bit, they were told to go knock on their customers' doors and find out what they wanted. And their response was, "What are you talking about? Like, that's not scalable at all." And their guidance was, this is the only time in your journey where you can do things that aren't scalable. So now is the time to really understand your customers in that way.
Really believe that. That's the gold in starting out in a small audience. So anyone listening right now, that you still have a hold of a smaller audience that you can connect with, take advantage of it. It won't always be that way.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said, I think, is it was always frustrating to me when I was trying to figure out entrepreneurship and how to execute business, which was mindset. You said the biggest difference between my funnel then and today was mindset. And I always felt when I was new that was like the most irritating bullshit response, because it was like, no, tell me what to do, right? But today, I very much believe that, first off, huge Tony Robbins fan. He was a tremendously transformative character in my life. And I think he is the one that was responsible for me understanding that idea of mindset shifts. But can you tell me a little bit about how you think about things differently at scale versus when you were just getting going?
Yes. And speaking of Tony, one of my most favorite things he ever taught me was when you are building a business, 80% is mindset, 20% is mechanics. And I can teach the mechanics all day long to my students, but if they don't believe they can do it, or if they don't have that mental toughness, all my strategies don't even matter. And so now I have found myself over the last few years incorporating the mindset into my teaching, because I know that I can't get them to the finish line without it. And so totally agree with you 100%. Back then, when I was first starting out, I did not prioritize mindset. Even though I was coming off of the Tony Robbins job, I just put my head down. I learned the funnels, the strategies, the conversions, the webinars, all of that I was obsessed with. And that's all I wanted to learn. And then when things got really, really hard and I made $267, I felt like I was a failure and I'd have to go back to that job. Like, that was the first thought, because mental toughness was not even a focus of mine. Luckily, I had great people surrounding me to encourage me to keep moving forward, but I didn't do that on my own. Fast forward to today, because I have more money and more influence and opportunity, I have a therapist, I have a business coach, I have a wellness coach, and I am in masterminds, because all of that to me is mindset. Like, my business coach, we do not talk funnels, we do not talk web conversions or webinar conversions, we talk leadership and how I can cast a vision with my team of 20 full-time employees to make sure that we are all moving forward in the right way. And so I just prioritize the mindset more today than ever, knowing if I've got that on straight, I cannot lose. And so it really is a conscious effort to do the work.
That's one of the most challenging things for me through my journey, is this never-ending shift of what being productive means for me. So, I grew up in this space of transactional sales. I grew up selling Cutco knives aggressively. And so I've got this
really cool, because I can't even imagine the skills you have from that. So that's cool.
Vector marketing, which is the marketing arm for Cutco, phenomenal training ground for entrepreneurship and for sales. I mean, just the reps alone, the number of transactions you get to do, it's thousands of appointments sitting down, but very short sales cycle. And so you get these dopamine hits, which conditioned me to feel like that's what winning was, right? These little hits. I'm being productive when I'm closing a transaction, and transitioning from, 0 to a million to 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 10 to 50, et cetera, et cetera. At each phase, you are expected to do something different as a CEO. And everybody handles that differently. But for me, mentally, making the shift of what's next and how to recondition myself has been very challenging. How have you, I know that you recently made a transition out of that seat or the roles changed, you brought somebody on. What was that like for you mentally to hand the reins off to somebody else?
Ooh, it's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. So I'm deep in it right now. Someone on my team's been with me 4 years. Funny enough, she came from the Tony Robbins world, and she's been with me 4 years, and then now she is my CEO. And I'm taking a mentor. My mentor has, showed me what it means to transition out of that CEO role and letting somebody else lead the charge. I didn't realize in the beginning it meant she's making the decisions. She is responsible at the end of the day for if we're hitting our goals or not. I've never in 14 years been in an experience where it wasn't 100% on me. And so I love it. And my days are shorter. Like on yesterday, my work day, I was done with my action items at 2 p.m., which is unheard of for me. And so I see my workload lessening. She's taken over the leadership team. She's working with all the departments. That's amazing. My ego has taken a hit though. Like, what do you mean that I'm not making the decision if we're going to do this on the launch or do that? What do you mean that I'm not talking to the CFO of our company anymore, or that the leadership team isn't looking for me to lead them? And so much of entrepreneurship is checking your ego at the door. And I've had many, many instances where I've had to do so. I also feel a little bit lost right now. Like, where is my time best spent? Kind of like what you were saying earlier, figuring out what should I be prioritizing? Where should I be spending my time? And it's so hard to figure out. And I'm deep in it right now. But I think this is my next growth challenge, like to get to the next level of where I want to go. And so I'm here for it, but dang, it's been difficult.
Yeah, well, I definitely relate to that.
You do? Oh, good. I'm not alone.
Oh man, I think I think that the beginning of that is self-awareness, right? The beginning of that is just recognizing, hey, I need to show up as somebody else right now. And you mentioned this notion of your coaches not being tactical, and in some way they're strategic, but they're not working on the mechanics of the business. They're working on the overarching guidance of the business, right? And who you need to be.
Yes.
On that note, and this is, I think it's relevant to a lot of people, but it is becoming more and more challenging to, and this will play in, I think, to your products, but it's more and more challenging to figure out who's full of shit and who's not. How did you? Oh, it's especially with the this infusion of AI coming right now, and you can basically just grab and repurpose content as if it's yours. How did you go about finding the business coach that you had in deciding who to listen to?
Oh, I love this question because I agree. There's a lot of crap out there and you've got to be really careful. And I've definitely dealt with it. I've gotten in situations where I've realized, hold on, this person isn't who I thought they were. They're not in line with my values and I'm going to have to cut bait, which is really hard because I am a people pleaser and I want to make everyone happy. But yeah, you got to be super careful with that. So for me, I like to choose mentors in two ways. Number one, if I've known them for a while and I genuinely know behind the scenes of their business. Because if I am friends with someone for a while or we're in a peer setting and they share the good, bad, and ugly and they're willing to do so, that makes me trust them a whole lot more. So speaking of my business mentor, it's Michael Hyatt, and I've known him for at least 10 years, I would say. And I'm friends with his daughters. He's got 5 daughters. And I've just been in and out of his world a lot. I've spent money on his group coaching programs before. I spent money on his digital courses, and then we became friends. I, 2 years ago, moved to Nashville, and Michael lives here in Nashville. And so we both have lake houses at the same place outside of Nashville. So we have a friendship as well. But at the same time, during that friendship, he shared the good, bad, and ugly. I knew what his business was doing behind the scenes. And I don't want to work with a business coach if I don't know that, one, they're likely making more money than me, or they've gone through the same challenges that I know I'm going to go through, and they can guide me. So that is very important to me. I pay a lot of money to work with Michael, so it's really important that I know that. And so you can't always get that lucky, like being friends with the person and being in their world, but you can do some investigative work. So the second way I choose somebody is if they are recommended to me by someone I trust. So I might get a coach that I don't necessarily get to go behind the scenes of their business, but so-and-so has worked with them. They've gotten great results. And so now I'm going to trust that. Here's an example. I just started working with a consultant in my business to help us holistically look at where we're shining, where we're growing, where we're thriving, and what is costing us too much time or money. And so he's doing a whole holistic approach on the business. I've never worked with him before, but he was recommended by someone that I really trust. And it's been a beautiful situation because of that. But those are usually the two. I know them well, or they've been recommended.
I like that. How leery are you of investing money to find those things out? Because in the beginning, if you don't get a referral, or maybe you get a referral, but you're taking it with a grain of salt, which, by the way, tremendously important. So there are people that I really trust that refer things to me, but I also have to know who they are. And so great, I trust them in one area, but I also have to have enough context to say, I still need to do my own homework. Yes. So with Michael Hyatt, for example, you said that you invested a bunch in courses with him and going through his training material. What's enough to put your money on the line to figure it out?
I think it's a little bit more time than actual what's enough in terms of I took 2 courses, so that's enough. I wanted to kind of see how he shows up online. I wanted to see how he navigates different things, like even how he navigated Black Lives Matter or the Me Too movement, like how he showed up in the world as a leader. I wanted to be in his proximity, so I gave myself time to go to his live events and be in that world. So to me, it was time. I think a good year of being in someone's proximity, taking their courses or group coaching or whatever they offer, and really paying attention gave me the confidence to say, okay, I'm ready to move forward. Now, I also wasn't ready to hire a coach, during that time. So it didn't feel like I had to rush it because it was a lot of money and I just wasn't ready to invest that just yet. So I think it was more time than anything.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's also a good lesson, which what I heard is what you said was you weren't ready. What I heard was you took the time, and those might have felt like the same to you. But I know for myself and for a lot of people, they always feel like it has to happen right now. And so, hey, it's
so impatient. I totally get that. I want it yesterday. Most of the things in my business, I want to do it yesterday. So I get that.
Well, good job taking your time on that one.
Thank you. One thing I've learned along the way and in the growth of my entrepreneurship and business, there's power in the pause. And I don't want to pause. I'm an Enneagram 3. Let's go. Let's hustle. Let's get it done. I'll do any work it needs to get to the goal I want. But what I've noticed is when I pause and don't make the decision today and I sleep on it and I consult a few people, I'm obviously going to make a better decision. And if I look back at all the mistakes that I've made along the way, most of them were very quick decisions. I didn't want to ask anyone because I didn't want their opinion because I kind of knew they would probably tell me to slow down. And so I don't ask and then I regret it. And so the power of the pause, it's been saving me a lot in these later years of my business.
That's great. There's power in the pause.
Yeah.
One of my frames that's parallel to that is sometimes the most productive thing I can do is nothing.
Amen to that. I 1,000,000% agree. And to kind of build off of that, I've had 2 situations in like the last 2 months where I have said no to something or let go of something that I was going to move forward on and I decided not to. And the potential for revenue and profit was big. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that I said no to because I knew the timing wasn't right. And it's easier to do that when you have a thriving business. I get that. But I feel that I'm very lucky that I can say no to those things. But in the back of my mind, there's this voice that wasn't there 14 years ago. So it's developed over the years that said, okay, we're going to let go of this. You might lose $250,000 in revenue, but something better is coming and you got to be patient. Something better is coming. It just happened 2 days ago. I said no to something, and right away I heard, but something better is coming. Just hold on. And so if I can believe that, I can make it happen.
Yeah, that's very hard when you don't have revenue. It's definitely much easier when you've got a thriving business.
Totally.
Though you do hear these sort of iconic stories like, Zuckerberg not selling for $1 billion and driving it anyway. And of course, we hear there's tremendous bias in those stories because we hear the good ones.
Right. That is true. That is true. Yeah.
That's a good lesson regardless. So, okay, let me pull it into kind of the present. Things are transitioning pretty quickly in terms of potentially different marketing models, different tools to use. And I want to kind of talk about, any shifts that are being made right now. But one of the things that, and you answered it in aggregate by saying you're better during the webinars, you're focusing more on conversion metrics, et cetera. But there are a lot of information products out there. There are a lot of products on how to market, how to create a business. What do you think it is about your model and or your product that has allowed you to accelerate and gain traction the way that you have?
Ooh, I love this question. So first of all, you said the word model. I do have a framework, and I think that a lot of digital courses teaching people how to do things are lacking the framework. So one of my courses that is like my bread and butter is called Digital Course Academy. And Digital Course Academy, we call it DCA, has a framework. There's a very specific way that I teach how to create a digital course and how to launch it. And so I take them through this framework step by step by step, very specific. And I do believe that put me on the map because people are using the DCA framework to launch their courses. I'm known for that. That's another thing. I'm known for something. So if you were out in my space, my world, and you said, who can teach me how to create a digital course? I have no doubt in my mind that I'd be in the top 3 of whoever is listed. Now, that is not by mistake. It's by lots of years of staying in my lane. And so as entrepreneurs, we crave variety. We want to do this and that and try this, and I want to add this and I want to add that. Where one of my secrets to success is I've always stayed in my lane. Yes, I've gotten bored at times. Yes, I've wanted to try something else, but then I come back to, well, if I'm feeling bored right now, what could I do different in this next launch that would be exciting and different and new? Let me give you an example. I'm launching Digital Course Academy in September, and I've launched it many times since 2019, this exact course, 2019 to today. And for the first time, we're going to go into a studio, and many of your listeners will know what I'm talking about, where all the screens of people on Zoom are behind you. And there's a really cool software that you can integrate to get people to engage, and prizes and a lot of fun and a lot of conversation. I've never done webinars that way before. And I don't know if it will work. I don't know if it's going to increase conversion. I don't know if it's going to be a little bit too flashy that maybe it won't, but I have to try. And so I'm excited to try something new for something I have done for years and years. But at the end of the day, I'm teaching people how to create and launch courses. And that is what put me on the map because I don't veer away from that. And so that's one thing that I think really makes a difference. And then I just have a very specific teaching style. I'm very patient, very virtual handholding, step by step, no stone left unturned. So I know what I'm about and I can easily communicate this is who I am. And also I have a podcast that I have been doing since 2013, and people get to experience me. And I teach on that podcast, so they get a little piece of me before they pay money to work with me. And I do think that podcast has made a difference in terms of getting people to trust me more inside my courses.
That's such a tough thing to, and maybe you have a mechanism that I don't know about, but it's like a billboard, right? It's a tough thing to track directly to the metrics.
It is, definitely. And what we do is, one, we look at the growth of the podcast and really pay attention to our downloads. But we do a lot of freebies inside of my podcast. I market my own things. I have a sponsor, but I also market my own things. So we track which episodes are the most popular, depending on not just downloads, but how many people are downloading the freebie that goes along with it. And so we can get a sense of where they're gravitating toward. And I have a lot of freebies around digital course creation. And so that helps immensely as well.
Interesting. Do you do the freebies? Are they unique to the episode, or do you have sort of an aggregate freebie that's driving towards one product?
I do both. For a long time, there was a year that every single episode I did, and I used to do one episode a week, now I do two, but every episode I did had a freebie with it. And I did that for an entire year, and it was way too much work. And I had a smaller team at the time, so I'm like, it would seem to be the same people were signing up for that freebie. So I let go of that strategy. And now every 3 or 4 episodes has a very specific freebie for that episode. We just did an episode I recorded about AI and how to use it to create courses. There's a cheat sheet for that. But then I have 4 or 5 overarching freebies that if I don't have a specific one for that episode, I'll do more of a general one that relates to my audience. But we're making a huge effort there because I do think a podcast is a great list builder if you are intentional about creating those freebies and mentioning them often.
Yeah. I could see that really bogging down your marketing team if you're creating a unique one for every single episode.
Yeah. And my marketing team doesn't do it. So that's a really great point. Because it will bog them down, we have a podcast team. It's a small team of 2 people, and they will create the freebies because you're right. It will really throw things off if I have them creating all those freebies every day.
I love that. Well, I think that any business, information, selling information, and also podcasts, content in general are these potentially huge levers, both for list building and other monetization strategies, even if it's to cover ad costs, for example. So I want to dig in a little bit deeper here. With your podcast, you mentioned that you did have a sponsor. Certainly, it's not like you need to have the revenue from a sponsor. What was the decision there? Why did you choose to have a sponsor versus not? How did you look at that?
Okay, so let's think about that. I got to think about this because you're right. It's not like I had to have the revenue in order to keep the business going. However, I put a lot of time and effort into that podcast. We do 2 episodes a week now, and the content in my podcast is very important to me. So I'm very much involved. And we just felt like if we're going to put this much time and effort to it, what if we could tie revenue to it to make it worth all that time and effort beyond the impact we were making? And so it was definitely a conversation around revenue. And because my podcast is so big and does a lot of downloads a month, we were able to get a really good number. If that number came in low, I don't think it would be worth it. But because I get over 1 million downloads a month, the number came in high, and I thought that number is worth it. Now, in addition to that, my HubSpot is my sponsor. I only promote HubSpot, and they have a network. So that means at the beginning of every episode I do, I promote somebody else's podcast in the network, but that means they promote me. And so I was looking for growth, just not money. And so I felt like I chose a sponsor that was focused on helping me grow my podcast as well as making revenue with it. And now that I make revenue with my podcast, I'm able to put that money back into the business, particularly with paid ads, which I highly believe in. And so it was just another way to help us grow our audience by taking that revenue and putting it back into the business.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. So growth engine, ultimately.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's I said it as if, I think I didn't mean to, but I think I said it as if taking revenue or having it being a revenue-based decision was a bad thing. It's a choice, right? But I'm always interested because some people feel like sponsorship is taking away from another CTA. So you have a sponsor and then you're not able to promote your own things the same way.
You make a great point. I thought about that hard, and we wouldn't have chose a sponsor if they had like some kind of rule that I can't promote my own things as well as promote theirs. I wouldn't have done it. Also, HubSpot's pretty cool. I don't do this, but they don't mind if you have other sponsors in addition to them. I think it's too many ads and I don't love it, but it's an option. So I didn't feel like I was in jail with them when we started to work with them. But you are right. I do believe promoting HubSpot twice on my podcast, it is going to take a little bit away from me promoting my own courses, my own freebies. We still do it and we still have success with it, but I'm sure it hinders it just a bit. So it is a choice for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there are a million choices through business.
Too many. It's exhausting.
Yes, it is exhausting. But the idea of the growth engine, I love, which is use the money to push it back in, and it's sort of smart money, right? You got the money, but you got another benefit, which was the network is promoting your show.
Yes. I think if it didn't include that, I probably wouldn't have done it. So you're right.
I want to talk about how you run things today. So, we talked a little bit about the transition to handing the reins off to a CEO. You talked about in the beginning hating the business that you created. The gap between those two things is an important one, and different entrepreneurs approach this differently. I grew up in the frame of, if I'm not driving hard, I'm not making as much progress as I could be making. So I'm sort of consistently trying to figure out the equation of how do I do the things to feel like I'm being productive, running as quickly as I can, and feeling fulfilled, right? And enjoying the process. What changed in the beginning of the business that you hated to deliberately creating one that you love?
I had to get really clear on what my priorities were. The reason why I really didn't like the first 2 years of my business is that I was doing one-on-one service work. There was only so much money or impact I could make, and I was tied to individual clients with very crazy, unrealistic expectations because I allowed it to happen that way. And so I wanted freedom. I left my last job that paid a lot and was super exciting with Tony to do something on my own. So if I didn't have the freedom, it wasn't worth it. I might as well go back to that job. And so I moved into creating digital courses and selling them because it gave me the freedom to do what I want. Now, if you fast forward today, I have a husband who is retired from the fire department, and he's only 52, but he retired. We say retired because he's not going to get another job. And partly because his wife makes a lot of money and I can support our family. And my husband was gone every 24 hours at the station. And now he's home every single day. And that is a beautiful thing. As I get older, I'm in my 40s now. As I get older, I want more time with my husband. I want more time with my son. And I want to do the things that I absolutely love. And that has become a priority to me. I have to admit, and I'm not proud of this, it wasn't a priority when I started my business. My business was my baby. I've never had a child of my own. My son is my stepson since he was 4 years old. And I think partly why I've never had this huge desire to have children, but partly why I probably didn't have kids, if I'm being really honest, is I got so into this business. What can I do? What can I create? It became my full identity. And at times I think I lost sight of why I'm doing all of this, not just to make a whole bunch of money in the bank. At the end of the day, it didn't even matter. And so if I didn't have my health and my family and the things I love. So to answer your question, today I have my priorities more in check. And partly because I have a husband that came to me a few years ago and said, enough is enough. Like, I never see you. We are not connected like we used to be. This business has kind of overtaken you. This is many years ago, actually, but it scared me. And I'm so lucky that he spoke up like that. So I think it's just getting my priorities straight and realizing why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I hustle a whole lot less these days, and I make a whole lot more. So I really do believe less is more, but I had to figure that out, and I was very scared to do less. I'm like you, that I believe that hard work was everything, and I needed to work my butt off to actually earn this and get what I have. I don't think I should have to work so hard. I don't think anyone does.
So the question that the hustler will ask is, how do you hustle less and make more?
Yeah. And this is a really important question. There's a few things, and I've thought about this for a long time because I have to be careful. I never want to say something that really, truly I don't believe or isn't true. So I ask myself, in those first few years, did I have to hustle? Do I believe I had to hustle to get to where I am today? And I do. And I tell my students, the first few years, I do believe you're hustling and you're making sacrifices because you don't know what you don't know, and all of it is new, and you've got to experiment and you got to go all in. But I wish after like 2-3 years, I started to scale back. I went many years without scaling back. But now what I know, how do you work less but make more? You have to find that thing in your business that is working well and double down. You have to say no more than you say yes, because as you grow, opportunities are going to be knocking on your door every which way. I just had one yesterday. Do a webinar with us. It's 3 people that have tons of influence. We're going to all do it together. We could get a lot of people on our email list. We could sell a lot of our books because these were authors. Sounds really promising. No, that is not where my focus is right now. I'm focusing on launching in 2 months. I've got to put my head down and just get it done. So I have to say no more than I say yes, which is not easy to an entrepreneur. And also, I have to be willing to double down on what's working instead of continuing to add new projects, new campaigns, new products. So that means that sometimes it gets boring and you've got to find a way to make it exciting again without adding more. So what's working in your business? How can you optimize it, double down, study how to do an evergreen launch and are evergreen in a bigger way? Or what are people doing in their launches now that you're not doing? That's the kind of learning and studying that keeps me excited about what I do.
That's great. That's great advice. I had a conversation with Rich Sheffrin the other day, and we were talking about this specifically. And his advice, and it's a long conversation, but his advice was find variety outside of the business.
Ooh, that's so good. 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. He also said he's terrible at doing this, and he's notorious for going to the midway point and then shifting gears and doing something different.
I appreciate his honesty, but it's also a really good point. I have a good friend, Marie Forleo, that always says you do not need to monetize all of your interests, hobbies, things that get you excited. You don't have to make money on all of that. And I think as entrepreneurs, we think we do, but no, that's where you can find that variety.
Yes. Well, I struggle with that too. I talked to my father about his hobbies as a retired human, and he's doing these things. And I just think, I feel like I would want to do those things and figure out how to monetize them.
Exactly. It's a sickness we have, for sure.
Perhaps. Okay. I have to ask, tangential, totally irrelevant to probably everybody else, but I'm curious. What's the tattoo on your arm?
Oh, it says love you more. So every time I tell my husband I love you, he says love you more. And so that's what it says. But here's the deal. My husband does not have like a lot of tattoos or anything. And one day last year, I asked him, would he get matching tattoos with me, which is super girly for the record. Like, would you ever do it? And then he's like, well, what would we get? And I'm like, something that we say all the time. And we both knew in the moment, I can't believe this man got the same tattoo on his arm, but his arm says love you more. And I love him so much for it. But yeah, we have matching tattoos. We're a little cheesy like that.
That's beautiful. I have a long story about my lack of tattoos, but ultimately it comes down to...
You have a mohawk and no tattoos? I can't believe it.
People are always wondering where it's hidden and why I don't have it. But the answer to it is, the short answer is no tattoos, because I can't think of anything, or I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to put on my body forever. And your story is great because it's exactly, it answers the question.
Yeah, it means something for sure. I have another one that we won't talk about that means nothing, and I was 18 and I probably need to get it. It's not a tramp stamp if that's what you're thinking, but it's still not great. And you can't see it anyway, but I'm just like, why did I get that? So I really do think that you are smart by just waiting. And if it ever comes to you, then that's the time.
Yep. Well, as with most things in life, it's a mixed blessing, right? I have a very good friend who has a bunch of those tattoos where he thinks, well, that was stupid. I don't know why I did that. They're all over his body. But he has a very good reframe. His name is John Roman. He runs a group called Front Row Dads, which is a group for male entrepreneurs about being family men with businesses, not businessmen with families.
I love that.
I do too. It's beautiful. That's his plug. But he's got all these tattoos from different eras of his life, and he is a master at asking questions and framing situations. And his frame for these tattoos is, no, I don't want to remove them. They are part of my story, and they remind me of who I was at these different points in life. And I like having those memories present.
I love that. I think that's important. What a great reframe.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you carving out time today. I have a bunch of other questions, but I know we're coming to an end. You have another launch coming up. You have a presumably formulaic approach to doing this. So before we close out, if you could tell us a little bit about A, the launch, but B, how you're structuring it and what's different this time. I know you mentioned a different venue, a different forum to do this, but how do you keep doing these on a routine basis and improving them each year?
Well, thank you so much for asking. So Digital Course Academy is the program where I teach people how to create and launch a digital course from scratch, and then take that course and launch it over and over again, staying in your lane, becoming known for something, and getting that consistent revenue to come in. And so this year, we've done it for many years, as I mentioned. A few things we're doing different. Number one is that last year or the year before, we decided to add, 2 years ago, we added a boot camp, and it was a free boot camp, how to get started with the digital course, which then led into, and if you want more, join my program. Well, we realized that we've got like 20,000 people in the boot camp, but it converted really low. Like I want to say like 4 or 5%. And so I thought something's off here. So the next year we did a paid boot camp. It was only $47, but people had skin in the game, and it converted at 25%. I mean, that's wildly different. And that's higher than what my webinars convert at. And so once we figured that out, we thought, okay, let's go. And so last year we had 4,000 people in a paid boot camp. This year, the goal is 8,000, doubling it, which is a ridiculous goal. But the word we chose this year as a team is unreasonable. Let's be unreasonable. So we set a very unreasonable goal for this boot camp, but we've got a lot of strategy in terms of how we're going to get it. We don't just set a goal and say, I hope it works, fingers crossed. Like, we've got strategy in place to see if we can make this happen. And so that's one thing, paid boot camp, but now we want 8,000 people in that paid boot camp. And then in addition to that, we're going to double down on this ManyChat strategy that we've been using and find a way to really boost it, to start getting those leads in this personal way of asking questions. They DM, we have the conversation with them, all automated, but getting them on our email list and nurturing them. So the DM ManyChat type strategy, we are going to double down on that as well. And really what it is, and this is what I teach my students, we look at what worked last year and then ask ourselves, can we eliminate a few distractions that didn't work, and can we double down and do even better this year? So it's always just building off of what we've done the year before. And then one more little nuance. I could teach digital courses all day long. 5 mistakes people make with digital courses, how to sell on a webinar with digital courses, how to teach in a digital course, all that. However, the mindset is just important, what I was mentioning earlier. So there's going to be a lot of content that I put out there that is around mindset and changing people's thoughts and then behaviors in terms of how they grow a business. And I think that's just as important. So we're going to see a lot of that infused into the launch as well. So anyway, thanks for asking. I could talk about it for way too long because I get so excited, but that was generous of you to ask.
No, I have a nuanced question there, which is, speaking of changing, improving, et cetera, you mentioned, we've talked a little bit about the ManyChat funnel, which is, for those that don't know, a tool to create basically chatbots, right? To have these branched logic, automated chatbots. We are, July of 2023, moving into the AI world. Are you playing with AI responses? Have you thought about, obviously you've thought about AI chatbots. Where does that fit in, if at all? If it's not part of this, are you playing with it? How do you see that?
So it is a big part of this, and where it lands in 2 ways. Number one, I believe that everything I teach in DCA, you can fast track it with AI. I don't believe that it's and this is not because I'm biased because I teach this, but just using AI to create and launch a course, you lose so many nuances versus learning from a framework and learning from someone who's gone before you and made all the mistakes. So I think a course like this and AI together, it's like a perfect combination. So I'm going to teach people how to use prompts to get their course done quicker. And I'm going to do that in the pre-launch before anyone buys, just to show them what they can do. But inside Digital Course Academy, we've created cheat sheets for every single lesson. And I've got many, many lessons in there to say, okay, you just learned how to do, let's say, how to outline a digital course. And there's these 5 steps to do so. Now, here are the prompts to plug into AI to get this done faster. And then here are the things to look at so you don't have a general watered down outline, which I think a lot of AI is doing. I do think a lot of the responses are missing heart and grittiness and stories. And if you're just taking what you get from AI, you're totally losing your whole journey of how you can teach something in a way that brings it to life. But at least you're not staring at a blank Google Doc. So every lesson now in Digital Course Academy has an AI cheat sheet. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. I also think that there's benefit to learning the framework. And you as an entrepreneur are missing a huge chunk if you are looking for the shortcut as opposed to using it as a tool to learn.
Yes, totally agree with you. You couldn't have said it better.
That's great. So where can people find out about the course or find out more about Amy Porterfield?
Well, thanks for asking. So amyporterfield.com/DCA for Digital Course Academy. That's where you can get on the wait list and get alerted when we go live. And then I have a podcast called Online Marketing Made Easy. So if you love podcasts and you love this one, you might like mine as well. So thanks for asking.
I love that. Amy, I appreciate you carving out time.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Thank you. That's awesome.
Beyond a Million.